Well, welcome back to Stories for the Cooped Up and Captive. Trying to catch up on a few stories that I've told at the Moth that I haven't had a chance to record for posterity's purposes. And it occurred to me, it came to word to me that my buddy Don Grant is going to be going in for some surgery this week. He may be the only person who actually watches these videos, so this one is for you, Don. This is one I told at the Madison Moth. The topic of the evening was nature. I think this one went down somewhere in July. So, my buddy John Humphreys is like a brother to me. He owns a company called Lizard Head Cycling Adventures. And with John, I have ridden across the top of the world on the Continental Divide through Colorado, the Indian Ridge Trail. We have ridden from Lake Powell along the Burr Trail to Boulder, Utah, and then across the legendary Highway 12, also known as Hell's Backbone, to Escalante and Bryce Canyon in Utah. The people I have met and the experiences that I have had with John have changed every day of my life. And in no small part, thanks to the strength that I gained on a mountain bike in the mountains, I was able to meet and win the hand of the most wonderful human I've ever met, and that would be my wife. Well, as such, I could not wait to share my relationship with John and the mountains with Sheila. So, in 2016, we booked ourselves a trip to Crested Butte, Colorado in late July and early August. Now, I've always said about my wife, if she treats me half as well as her least favorite horse, I am a kept man. Compassion is her claim to fame. So at the time, we had a 13-year-old lab named Remy. And Remy, we had been treating her for a good long time for liver failure, and her back legs were given out. But as I tell my clients, it wasn't her time yet. And as we kept getting closer and closer to the trip, I knew we could not leave her behind. So I canceled our airplane tickets and we loaded up the pickup truck. Half a quart of firewood, 3 kegs of beer in a styrofoam cooler, and 30 pounds of brisket and ribs, and we headed for Crested Butte. We made Crested Butte on a Saturday afternoon. After an 18-hour drive and a gain of 8,800 feet of elevation, we were a little bit gassed. So looking to acclimate, we just hung out in Crested Butte. They happened to be having an art fair that day. Remy toddled around and sucked up the love from all the hippie artists in town. On Sunday, we rented mountain bikes and went on a short loop around the High Line and the Low Line mountain bike trails above Crested Butte. Remy stayed back and guarded the truck. Token ran with us while we were riding our bikes, and she kept toggling back and forth between Sheila on our bikes. Monday morning, we met our group of 10 people in Brush Creek, just east of Crested Butte. Now, the beautiful part of Brush Creek is you can park your rig in one spot, and you can ride for a solid week and never touch the same trail twice. Monday night, we introduced Sheila to a mountain monsoon. We were cooking the brisket and the ribs in the mountain microwaves, Dutch ovens. A monsoon kicks up, 38 degrees, gale force winds, and torrential rains. We had to build a wing dam around our tent to keep the torrents from flowing through the floor of the tent. The dogs, on the other hand, were tucked away in the pickup truck. I am shocked that Sheila did not join them. Tuesday, we rode the world's most perfect mountain bike trail, the 401 Trail. That's a trail that if you budget your energy, your nutrition, every breath, and every pedal stroke, you can clean that thing from the town of Gothic to the peak. The payoff is you get to eat lunch overlooking the Maroon Bells. Sheila, on the other hand, found a 70-year-old Italian cowboy that had an extra horse, and they went and rode the Black Canyon just outside of Gunnison, Colorado. So all week long, Remy very quickly took up residence in what we call the kitchen, which is a Coleman stove and a cooler that they cook our dinner. And she'd kind of hang out and wait for Travis Tucker, one of the guides, something to fall off of his cutting board. As the week went on, she just kept getting weaker and weaker. Thursday, she was barely able to stand up. We call Thursday Resolution Thursday. John described the ride as a death march or going 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. He said, all right, men, he's prepping us for the day's ride. He says, it's going to be like going 10 rounds with the champ. Right out of the gate, he's going to try and take you down with blows to the head and the neck and the body. If you hang with him, he'll give you a break during the 4th and the 5th rounds. Well, he wasn't just exactly kidding, because right out of camp, the trail pitched towards the sky. We spent an hour and a half in Granny Low, grabbing inch by inch, foot by foot of the trail. Finally, we made it to a pasture. There was a herd, about 25 or 30 beef cows and a bull that thankfully that was more interested in passing on his genetics than he was a bunch of skinny ass bike riders riding across his pasture. We rode that pasture for about a half an hour or 45 minutes, which delivered us to a feature we call the rock garden. John stopped us for a regroup and he said, all right guys, here's the deal. Look where you want the bike to go. Keep your weight back, and if all else fails, if in doubt, chicken out, because look around. If you go down, you cannot get a helicopter up here. It's us that are going to have to get you back to civilization. Well, evidently I missed the memo, because about a halfway through the half mile of the rock garden, I center punched a rock the size of a washing machine and promptly proceeded to donate a healthy chunk of DNA to the Rocky Mountains, which made the next mile and a half really interesting, because it was a rim trail. The trail was about 8 inches wide. On the right side was a 400-foot drop-off, and on the left side was sawgrass, which felt really special, gnawing away at my bloody shin like a Ginsu knife. Finally, we made it to a service road, or what should have been a piece of cake. The only problem was this service road had baby's head rock and a 16% grade. After another couple of miles, it delivered us to a trail that was best described by an electrician from California, and I quote, "Who is the sick son of a bitch that has the nerve to call this a trail?" John, on the other hand, is ahead of us, trying to keep our morale up. All right, men, pick a number between 3 and 5. Take 3 steps and 3 breaths. Take 5 steps and take 5 breaths. He was pointing out the wild mountain strawberries to us that we could pick while we were gasping for breath. He was pointing out the eyes in the aspen tree. Meanwhile, if any of us could have caught him, we would have strangled that SOB and thrown him over the crevice. Finally, well above tree line, we see John about 50 or 100 yards ahead of us, leaning up against his backpack eating a sandwich. When we got to him, we looked down, and he was looking out on the entire Gothic Valley, Teocalli Peak, and the Maroon Bells. It was at that moment that we realized the splendor is delivered in increments of suffrage. The descent was like an hour and a half roller coaster on 2 wheels. There was no way not to ride that trail without yelling, "Yee-haw!" There was a guy riding in front of me that would just disappear into the shoulder-high monument flowers, and they would close behind him, and I would just follow him up. It was awesome. That night, I introduced Sheila to the rejuvenative effects of bathing in a stream that was mountain runoff, 38 degrees. There's an art to that. But Remy essentially had not been able to get up for the last 2 days. We knew it was time. Now, the beer was gone, which was very handy, because the gigantic styrofoam cooler that we brought 3 kegs of beer from Wisconsin we pretty well knew that we were going to be taking Remy back to the farm in the cooler. So we made a plan Friday. It was time for her to say goodbye. But Remy loved to swim. And just up the next pass to the west, there was a lake called Lake Irwin, and Remy just loved to swim. So we drove her up there. I scooped her up in my arms and made my way down the embankment and set her down in the water. Remy had different ideas. She swam, chased balls for 45 minutes, and when she was done, she beat me back up the embankment to the pickup truck, as if to say, nah, I think I'll head back to Wisconsin with you guys. So later that afternoon, we packed up the truck, and like a couple of kids kicking and screaming going back to school, we paused in the bottom of Brush Creek and took in the horses and the cattle grazing and the streams and the mountains and the sunset. At the time, Sheila was the COO of an equine hospital that employed 15 veterinarians and 13 technicians. It wasn't unusual for her to get 50 to 75 telephone calls, text messages, and emails a day. She looked over at me and she said, I have not even known where my phone was since Wednesday. We're pretty dang convinced that Lake Irwin was full of 45-degree holy water because Remy was with us until the day after Thanksgiving. And we also learned that the fewer pictures you take, the more you see. So, if all else fails, keep something moving forward. Don, I love you like a brother. Good luck. We'll see you when you get out.